Welcome to Nature Watch, engaging citizens in science, with your host, Matt Meester.
I want to take this opportunity to introduce you to my esteemed guest, Desiree Meester. She's a fourth-year student at one of the top-rated natural sciences universities in the United States, the University of Idaho in Moscow. She's earning her degree in rangeland management ecology with a minor in forestry and an emphasis in ecosystem restoration. Wow, that's going to be a tough one to put on a business card. So what does that long degree mean, Ms. Meester?
It pretty much means that any landform that isn't ice or water, I will be trying to restore or bring it back to a ecosystem that makes it suitable for both recreation as well as animals and plants.
Please define the reclamation and restoration and explain to my audience the different states the process can be in.
Great. Well, there's approximately 4 to 5 states that a ecosystem can be in, and it's pretty much like a step ladder. So restoration's at the top, and that's state 1, while at the bottom there's state 3, 4, or 5, and that's where you are at right now in the ecosystem's timeline. And that can be invasive plants or even a completely different ecosystem than what was naturally there. Reclamation is your goal of climbing up that ladder towards restoration, but you're not quite there yet. While restoration, you're as close to state 1 as you can possibly be.
Okay, so a level 5 state would be probably the worst condition that you might be faced with, and level 1 is going to be something where you're considered in restoration and it's close to the original ecosystem that was there?
Correct. So an example of like a state 5 would be a tall grass prairie going into a ponderosa pine stand. So that change from a grassland to a forest land would be that dramatic change.
Yeah, is that something that we as users end up producing? Does it go from the prairie, the grass that you're talking about, to ponderosa pine because of us, or is that just a natural happening in the environment?
There's a combination of things. So with that change, with the public eye, a lot of people are against prescribed burning. And prescribed burning is kind of one of those natural things that allows the ecosystem to recycle itself and start over. Without that fire, allows forbs and shrubs and trees to come in that weren't there before, as well as invasive plants. So all of that can contribute to that change from one state to another, as well as not being able to use certain tools due to being too close to somewhere or the public's opposition.
Wow, an excellent segue into my next question. What are the tools that scientists use to aid in the restoration and reclamation of public lands?
So there's many tools. As I said before, prescribed burning is one that works really well in a lot of different rangelands. There's also weed pulling, herbicides, even bringing in specific types of insects that can compete and take out some of the invasive plants. There's weed pulling. There's all kinds of different tools that scientists can use, and it really just depends on the location as well as what you're trying to get out of the ecosystem.
And I've heard of intense efforts on scientists and communities' part to restore many areas of the Yellowstone National Park. Can you give me some examples of the work that is being done there?
Great. That also ties in with the last question, where you bring in an animal that may not have been there for a while. For example, the wolves at Yellowstone. When they were introduced, Doug Smith, one of the wildlife biologists in charge of the Yellowstone Wolf Project, actually said it brought back beavers into Yellowstone. The beavers were almost completely gone out of Yellowstone. It's actually helped bear population, lynx, wolverines, all kinds of different populations. But what I look towards is actually the riparian zones, or the rivers and the plants around it. And it actually increased the amount of willows that were part of that system, because the wolves made it so that the elk could no longer browse as much and kept moving. So even though the elk herd increased 3 times the amount that it originally was, they actually changed their eating habits, which allowed the rivers to come back into a natural state and become healthy again, which allowed all the other animals to come back into the park as well.
What are some of the challenges scientists find in this type of reclamation work? Any controversies?
Well, the wolves were and are one of the largest controversies around, and are debated among so many different people, including those that also have my degree, because wolves travel. They can kill livestock, or they can herd elk into other people's property, which can cause damage. So this, in the public's eye, especially around Yellowstone, is they're opposed to it because of their opposition, as well as the damages that are done by wolves. So public is one of the largest challenges that scientists have to face.
Okay. And so how do you, as a scientist in the future and even today, how do you anticipate working with the public to help them, I guess, help the environment to get to that stage? Is it stage 1?
Yeah.
Reclamation.
State 1.
State 1, okay.
So the goal is to be able to work with the public from the very beginning. There was not a lot of working with the public to begin with. So being able to do city hall meetings, working with the different clubs within that area, like recreationalists, hunters, working with everyone to kind of hear their concerns, as well as everyone bouncing off their ideas for the project. And that really gets the public in a better state of mind to be willing to accept these type of projects.
Okay. So a lot of, it sounds like you'll be doing a lot of educating of the public, as well as listening to them and addressing their concerns from the scientific community as to how they can benefit the restoration of that area. What ways can my audience become a part of the restoration and reclamation efforts?
Well, there's so many different efforts, especially with there being so many different types of rangeland. Rangeland is pretty much everything that isn't forest, water, or ice. And so there's all kinds of local rangelands that people can participate in restoring. They can use their personal property. There's actually federal grants for farmers that want to take a little chunk of their land and help restore it towards the original rangeland. So people can actually get grants for restoring some of their property to the natural state. You can become more active in groups. Like the example that I gave with the Yellowstone is that there's the hunters, the recreationalists, hikers, campers. You can be part of those groups, and which really helps create a representative that gives your point and what your beliefs are in a more direct and concentrated manner. You can also plant native seeds on your property. You can actually look up in seed banks what type of rangeland you're in, and they will send you native plants to be able to plant in flower pots. So if you really just want to spruce up the house, or even make really smelly, good smelling plants around your house, that's a great way of doing it. As well as that would bring back the natural bee population, hummingbirds, all kinds of other animals that are really fun to watch.
Now, is that something that even city dwellers can do?
Yeah, there's window pots that can hang out of your window, and you can plant some of the grasses and the flowering plants in those, and it would still work. You can even have them in potted plants at your house or inside the house.
What are some other things that people could do?
Well, there's also the biggest thing is to attend local and federal town hall meetings and land use meetings. This is where you can hear what's going on, you can hear the different ideas for the project, and you can really become educated on what's going on, which will either make you feel more comfortable, or you can speak to your leader in that club that you are in to speak those concerns as well. And that's one of the largest things, is becoming active in the project itself.
And so are my listeners able to then how do they become a part of those projects?
Well, the way scientists work on projects is off of volunteers. They cannot afford to pay large masses to do parts of their projects. So volunteers are actually the basis of each project. Now that may be pulling weeds or even just counting plants around you. But that is one of the largest contributions as well, is that's what keeps a project going, is the volunteers.
Okay.
So there are ways you can email the science program that's going on, or during the town hall meetings they have a fill out form for volunteers.
Now, you mentioned some of the federal organizations that people can go to town halls on and so forth on. What are the names of some of those agencies that people should look towards?
So there's always the Forest Service, as well as Bureau of Land Management, and that's more of a public working government organization.
Okay.
And that will be more of the local groups and more of those restoration projects locally.
Okay. Do you find that many cities, or is it more geared towards like universities where you can volunteer for universities to help with projects and stuff?
Yes, especially during the summer months when it's more sunny out, that's when a lot of projects are going on. So that's definitely around June is the prime time to look for projects to volunteer for. Universities definitely have projects, and they usually have postings within their buildings about them.
And what would be maybe the first step for a citizen that notices an area that they think should be reclaimed? Who would they contact? Would it be like a county administrator, or would it be a city administrator? How would they identify that area, and to whom should they identify that area for potentially needing somewhat reclamation?
So that depends on if it's private land, public land, Forest Service land, Bureau of Land Management land. So if you would contact that specific proprietor if it is in their area. So if it's public land, I would suggest the Bureau of Land Management, and you can then work through the network of them to work on that restoration project. They may just say, if you can get a group of people together, we'll direct you on different methods, and your group can keep it up, kind of like adopt a highway.
Ah, okay. Now, with something as big as a national park like Yellowstone, you had mentioned being a part of local user groups and those kind of things. Is there anything that people from outside the area, but maybe visiting, that they're able to do in the restoration process?
There's always being able to donate money, which will help continue the restoration project, as well as following rules and regulations of the park. So if it says do not go in this area, then try not to go in there, even if there's an opportunity for an amazing photo. Because even one footstep in the wrong spot may damage a rare plant. So just following those rules, as well as donating money. They do accept volunteers from outside groups as well. So if you want to make a weekend of volunteering within the park, you can do that.
I might also suggest that you pack in what you pack out, or you pack out what you pack in. And also, now most national parks will let you bring your animals anyway, but on federal lands and anywhere there might be some restoration, make sure that your animals, specifically dogs and so forth, horses, those kind of animals that you take with you, are not trampling over lands that are being restored, or there's a process going on getting them from stage 1 to, or stage 5, sorry, not stage. State 5 to state 1. So we as users of our public lands and even the private lands, it sounds like there's quite a few things that we can do to help our scientists and our volunteers to bring the lands back into their natural state. Now, you had talked a little bit about history. How does that play a part in the scientists evaluating land for restoration and reclamation?
Great question. Scientists wouldn't know what state was state 1 if they didn't have any historical records. So that can be from photos that people may have taken and turned in so that they can study them, or even journals from when the pilgrims came. And those historical records allow the scientists to compare where they're at, so state 3, for example, and be able to say, we need to work our way up towards this photograph, or this record the Forest Service took in 1940.
Okay, wow. That may be a whole other way that my audience can help scientists, is if they know of a restoration program happening in an area and they have photographs from like their grandparents or even further back of that area, so you could use photographs of that area from the 1800s kind of thing.
Yes.
And that helps you. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate you coming in today and helping us to learn a little bit about restoration and reclamation and how we as individuals can become a part of that process and making our environment even better. Thank you for coming, Ms. Meester.
Thank you for having me.